I love this book like almost no other book in the world. I've read it, I just finished it this morning on my walk. I've read it 22 times because one, I'm not that bright a guy, and two, I'm not good at this stuff, so I just need to reread it and reread it and reread it. This is the single best business book I've ever read because it's the best book about sales and closing that I've ever read. So we, as attorneys, really like to think of ourselves as professionals or craftspeople, right? We're more like a shoemaker than almost anything else. Or that's how we like to think of ourselves. We're not. We make widgets, it's okay. It's fine to do that, and we need to sell widgets. So we think of ourselves, we don't like to think of ourselves as salespeople, but we absolutely are salespeople. If I don't sell and I don't close clients, then my wife is going to divorce me, right? I'm gonna lose my house, my wife is gonna divorce me. It's gonna take a little longer since I pay off the house, but it's eventually gonna happen. We just don't like to think of ourselves like this, but we absolutely are salespeople, and we absolutely are closers. So if we don't recognize that, then we're just gonna be mediocre at the thing we do. So you need to learn it. And so let me kind of take you through just a little bit. There are two parts to the sale, right? There's the sales part, and then there's the closing part. So the sales part, attorneys are relatively good at. We have some serious problems with it, but we're relatively good at it. So sales is like getting people to like us and answering their questions and telling them what they need to do, so on. Kind of giving them the framework of what their problem is and how we can fix it, do that sort of thing. We're relatively good at that. We talk too much though. This is one thing when you're doing consultations, I would suggest you do this. Talk about 1/10 the amount we talk right now. So people will tell you their story, and then you need to tell them how you're gonna fix these things, but we just go on and on and on about the legal side of how we're gonna fix it, and none of the people we sit down with care. They're never gonna remember any of that. They're just gonna remember how you made them feel, and that you told them that you can fix their problem and gave them some very short version of how you're gonna do it. But they are literally never going to remember everything you say about the law and how you do it. We just do that because we dork out on stuff like that, right? We're lawyers. But they just don't care, so don't do it. So that's the sales part of it. And then the closing part is totally different than sales. So sales is based on emotion. People buy based on emotion. We all want to tell ourselves that we decide to buy a product or a service based on logic, and that's just not true. So we decide to buy something based on emotion, and then the closing part is when we get paid, when we have a value exchange. And that is logic. So that has to, so we decide on emotion, and then we finish on logic. So both of those need to be learned, but closing is an entirely different animal than the sales. If you just try to do it on emotion in the sale, then you're not gonna do very well. So what the Closer Survival Guide does is it lays all of that out. It gives you a lot of very good rules to follow in these things, and there are some rules in here. It's going to give you the rules, and then it's going to go through different types of objections or complaints that you're going to receive when you try to get that value exchange, when you try to have somebody pay you. So I want to do this. Tell me what the most common objection you get when you say, hey, all right, so let's get going on this. What's the most common objection you get from potential new clients?
I don't have the money.
Yep. I don't have the money. What else?
You need to think this over.
I need to think about it. Yep. What else?
They want absolute certainty on the cost.
Uh-huh. I want to know the end from the beginning. Yep. What else? Those are the big ones. I need to think about it. I don't have money. Yeah. Okay, so let's deal with those. If you have others, just pipe in, that's fine. So, for example, I don't have money. Grant goes through and he gives at least 5 or 6 different ways to deal with that, okay? And you need to feel, you need to get comfortable with all of them, that you need to feel during the consultation which one is gonna work with this person and just kind of try it out. So there's this really interesting idea that he goes over, and this is kind of revolutionized how I deal with people in consults. It's an idea that people complain, but complaining is not really an objection. It's just a complaint. So what you need to do is treat all complaints as complaints until they're further verified as an actual objection. So, for example, I don't have the money. Yeah, that's terrible. So how do you want to pay? Right, because you're complaining. Like I had a guy. Was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. Yeah. So, no, it was a couple days ago. Like $150,000 in a year, and our divorces don't cost that much. So, he was totally fine, and but he complained about it. He's like, "That's expensive." I'm like, "Yep, that's expensive." And you have 4 kids. So how do you want to pay? Right? And he's like, with a credit card. Like, okay, that's great. It's a complaint, right? And then if it had been an objection, an actual objection, then he would have said, look, I really don't have that money on hand. It's all tied up in this, or and then you can deal with that as well, and there are ways to deal with that. But it's the idea that everyone's going to complain. Rich people are going to complain about money. Poor people are going to complain about money. Middle class people are going to complain about money. So you just treat it as a complaint, and then you just kind of go do your thing, right? But there are a number of ways you can deal with those types of situations, and everyone you can think of, everyone that I've ever dealt with as an attorney, is in this book. So it's really kind of almost a procedural book in that sense, like, okay, this and then this and then this, and it works great. Now you have to practice these things. This is the tough part. We as attorneys just want to go attorney, right? But when we think of ourselves as business people, when we think of ourselves as, okay, in order to help people, we need to be good at sales and we need to be good at closing, then you realize that you got to practice this stuff in order to have people hire you so you can help them. So it is a procedural book. You really do need to put in the work on it, but you're going to see significantly higher retention rates if you do this, and significantly higher revenues if you do it. Yeah?
Have you read any of Grant's other books?
I've read all of them.
All of them. And do you think this is his best book?
Sell or Be Sold is very good too. I like Sell or Be Sold a lot. I think I've read that the second one. I think I've read that 5 times. But yeah, the Closer Survival Guide is by far his best.
Good to know.
Yeah. Okay, a couple other things here. Oh, you're going to learn how, in here, you're going to learn how to communicate value. Not something we do terribly well as attorneys, is communicating the actual value, like the emotional value to people. And one thing I would suggest doing is when you talk about value, like when you're getting at the end of your consultation and you're saying, okay, so this is what we're going to do for you, and you're expressing that value to them, to then ask them to pay you, write it down. Like have a pitch and write down what sets you apart from other attorneys. Or even not what sets you apart from them, just what you're going to do. Like even if it's just telling about your system, like how you actually do things, just write it down. But have that memorized and you write it. There's something about writing it. People don't believe what they hear, they believe what they see. So you have a pad of paper there, and you just go through and you tick off, like, I'm going to call you every Friday, or whatever it is, right? You have all of those things memorized, and you just start doing it. And you will feel super uncomfortable at the beginning because you'll think that they are really bored as you're ticking through these things. They're not. They actually love it. People want to see that sort of stuff. The potential clients are pretty actually mesmerized by that. And once they see that on paper, right, and then you write down, and I also suggest writing down your numbers. So if you're going to talk to them about what it's going to cost, like actually write down the numbers, because for whatever reason they like it more, they respond to it better, better discussion about it. I would make that change. That one change right there, writing down all of our value propositions, probably increased just that one thing increased our retention rates by 10 to 15%, I think. Just that one change.
Like, on a, like a pad, like while you're talking to them, or like, but you also mentioned like by email, like.
No, I just do, I do it on a pad of paper when I'm
Right,
sitting
right,
in there.
while you're sitting there.
Yep,
Okay.
yep, exactly. Yeah, I don't, so I meet with people, unless they live in Utah, like I'm meeting with them. So I don't know how you do this on the phone so much, you could hop on a Zoom call maybe and kind of do this. But even when I'm on a phone call with people, I'm sitting there writing it on a pad of paper as we're talking about it, just to kind of get the mindset. And it gets you in, because you come up with a script, right? A script in your head. So once you write it down, you're going to go through all of those points in the same way. And what that allows you to do is, if it doesn't work, right, if somebody's not responding to part of the script, then you can change the script. So I think it's super helpful on a lot of different levels. Yeah.
So like you write it and then you kind of turn the pad so they can see it, or do you give them that piece of paper?
Yeah. Yeah, so what I do, I sit at a 90-degree angle to them. So when we're talking and they're telling me their story, then I'm writing things. I write like a 5-year-old. It's just scribbling stuff down. It's terrible. And then when we're done with that and we're going into the kind of the close part and I'm writing all these things down for them, then I actually get next to them. So I'm not at 90 degrees anymore. I put the chair over next to them and we kind of lean in and I'm writing things and we're talking. And there's something about that too, just that physical proximity and the kind of leaning in that kind of bolsters it a little bit. And I always make a joke that when I start writing it down, that I write like a 5-year-old and everyone laughs. I'm like, it's not that funny, but yeah. And but it just kind of breaks the tension, and they really seem to enjoy it. Yeah. Okay. Okay, we talked about handling objections. Oh, so for me, I wrote down some of the ones that I deal with all the time. I need to think about it. That's a huge one. I don't have the money. That's the first. I think I need to think about is the second. I've talked to my parents. I'm meeting with another attorney. Who gets that one? Relatively often, yeah. Yeah, that happens a lot. This is my favorite. Another attorney said she could take the case for half of the price you're quoting me. I'm like, okay, sure. Anyway, you're going to be able to deal with all of these at the end of this. But what I can tell you, the meeting with another attorney, I used to get that all the time. And I thought they were actually serious, and they're not serious when they say that. They're not, they're just lying to you. So once I started writing these things down and getting better at the close and better and more communicating that value more, amazingly enough, they never said they needed to meet with another attorney. Like, it was just a stall tactic. So once you do that, that's going to go away. But if it is a legitimate thing, you're going to learn how to deal with it. Yeah.
So knowing what knowing what I know about you and how you value making more money and being paid and all of that,
Mm-hmm.
when they say, I talked to somebody else who said they were only half the price, how do you handle that?
So one of the ways you can do it is to say, okay, let's assume the price were equal, right? The prices were equal. Who would you rather do business with? And then they'll tell you or the other person, right? So if they say you, I'd rather do business with you, you sit down there with a pad of paper and you say why. And then they tell you something, you say why else, why else, why else, why else, until they're done, right? So you've written down 3, 4, 5, 6 things. And then you say, okay, so how do you want to pay? They're like, but the other guy will do this. I'm like, I know, but do. And you just read back to them what they said.
I like it.
Yep. And then they think, well, yeah, you're right, okay. And then if it's the other person, right, they say the other person, then you do the exact same thing. You're like, oh, okay, why is that, right? And you get all of the reasons why, and then you exhaust them, and then you deal with them. Because those are their objections, and you want to deal with their objections. But you have to get them out first, and then you deal with them afterwards. Yeah?
I was gonna say, when they say, I've talked to another attorney, and they'll say they do it half price or whatever, there's 2 things about the other attorney thing. First of all, I do divorces too.
Mhm.
There's only a certain domain of things they're gonna say.
Yeah.
So if you talk to Marco, he said he's gonna say something similar to what I'm gonna say. And if you didn't hire him when you talked to him, then you're lying.
Yeah.
That's the main path. If they would do it for half price and they didn't hire that attorney at why are they even talking?
they're lying.
It's
They're-
just not, it's just not happening.
Yeah, they're straight lying to you, right?
Yeah.
But here's one of the things, you can't say that.
Well, I know.
Right.
But it gives you a lot more confidence to
Yeah.
talk to people when you know they're bluffing.
Yeah, because you want to, but you have to give them an out. Otherwise, because if you don't, if you make them feel like they're lying, or that you recognize that they're lying, then they can never buy from you, right? Because then they're embarrassed and they're not gonna do it. So one of the other great things that the grant goes over in here is the first rule of selling is always agree. So even if they're freaking up in the night, you're like, yep, and then you just go on with something else. Like you just don't say no, you just agree with whatever it is and then go on, and deal with the problem. Yeah.
It also sounds like that's a good opportunity to say, it looks like since you didn't choose them at the time, you're looking for something else, can I help you identify what that is?
Exactly.
Maybe that's something
Yep,
that happens.
you are in my office for a reason, because you wanna hire me. So tell me what's really going on here, right? You can get through all these things, and this is the book that teaches that. Like I said, 22 times, I absolutely love this, so, okay.